If the grocery stores close tomorrow, the average modern home exhausts its food supply in exactly 3 days. Humidity and pests love the standard cardboard boxes found in most kitchens, while the oily bran and brown rice makes it a ticking time bomb of rancidity. To build a food supply that survives long-term disruptions, you must select staples that bacteria physically cannot break down. You need biological immortals. Survival at this scale requires the complete removal of moisture to construct a caloric baseload of zero water energy. The engine of that baseload runs on 3 primary carbohydrates: white rice, dry pasta, and aggressively dried rolled oats. This diagram of a sealed Mylar bag shows exactly how you isolate these grains. By tossing in an oxygen absorber, you actively pull out the floating oxygen molecules, leaving a void where mold and decay cannot begin to form. Look at the tightly packed kernels on these hanging cobs. Before modern freezers, dried corn kept villages alive by slowing biological spoilage to zero. Hardtack serves as the ultimate expression of this philosophy. Sailors and soldiers carried these bone-dry biscuits as indefinite fuel because they contain no moisture for bacteria to utilize. These desiccated carbs form the essential caloric bedrock, ensuring the body has reliable energy when outside providers stop functioning. Carbohydrates keep you breathing, but rebuilding the body requires muscle. The problem is that protein usually rots within days. Dried beans and lentils solve this vulnerability. They are dormant powerhouses of protein and iron, locked in a state where bacteria cannot survive without water. Powdered milk uses this same logic, ghosting the bacteria entirely by stripping away the liquid environment they need to multiply. For immediate protein, commercial canning acts as a technical cheat code. These vintage ration cans provide an impenetrable barrier, relying on intense heat and a perfect seal to stop time. Leveraging advanced dehydration and thermal armor allows you to stockpile the vital muscle-building components that historically separate survival from starvation. High-density calories require fat, but standard butter contains residual water and milk solids that act as pathways for spoilage. Ghee bypasses this weakness through simmering. This diagram shows heat causing water molecules to evaporate, while heavy milk solids sink, isolating a bright yellow layer of pure fat. This pure fat state results in low peroxide values, creating a controlled oxidation-resistant armor. Coconut oil provides the plant-based equivalent. It is naturally rich in stable saturated fats that inherently repel the staleness that ruins most seed oils. Stripping out these chemical weaknesses leaves you with pure, imperishable fat, the highest density caloric armor required for long-term endurance. Now we reach the highest tier of the pantry. Foods so chemically dense, they weaponize their own structure against microbial invaders. Look at this historic method of tapping a tree for syrup. In their raw, unrefined state, pure maple syrup and blackstrap molasses contain such concentrated solids that they naturally block mold and decay. White sugar and honey take this further. In this microscale view, their rigid crystalline structure aggressively pulls water particles out of invading bacteria, causing the cells to shrivel and collapse. Raw honey deploys a secondary weapon, natural acidity and enzymes that maintain a hostile environment. These dense sugars act as impenetrable fortresses, turning sweetness into a lethal biological defense mechanism that defies time. Finally, we reach the undisputed ruler of the survival pantry, salt. Its immortality comes from its status as a pure mineral. It contains zero organic matter, offering absolutely nothing for bacteria to feed on. Seeing this camel caravan traverse the desert sands, you are witnessing a resource that defies decay. Because it cannot spoil, salt served as a permanent currency for ancient empires. Gathering these specific physiological pillars engineers a biologically invincible foundation that outlasts the chaos of society itself. If the power grid goes down tomorrow, the standard survival handbook demands a stockpile of bulk calories. Mountains of white rice, endless bags of dried beans, and bland grain stores will keep your heart beating through an emergency. Relying solely on a utilitarian pantry creates a severe psychological vulnerability. When days turn into weeks without the familiar routines of a warm morning brew or the bite of proper seasoning, sheer caloric survival quickly spirals into mental exhaustion. The mind starves long before the body does. The items that actually preserve our humanity, the fresh produce, the soft-baked goods, the rich dairy, are highly unstable. Within a few short weeks of a grid failure, the very items that offer comfort surrender to mold and bacteria. This chart details the Decay Defense Spectrum. This visualization maps a specific upper echelon of pantry items based on how they interact with microbes. These flavors, rituals, and stimulants survive indefinitely because they actively manipulate physical chemistry to block the paths of decay. Effective preparedness requires moving past simple hoarding. To sustain morale through a crisis, you must build an immortal arsenal of comforts that wages a permanent chemical war against spoilage. The first tier of this chemical defense is passive denial. This covers the delicate, bone-dry elements of your kitchen, from instant coffee and green tea leaves to baking soda and heavily dehydrated herbs. Microbes require a baseline level of free water to multiply and spread. By aggressively stripping away that moisture through intense dehydration processes, these foods become uninhabitable wastelands. A bacterial cell physically shrinks and fails to latch on to these completely dry surfaces. Certain crystallized items take this defense further. Hard candies and bouillon cubes are packed with tightly bonded sugars and sodium. These dense geometric structures lock up stray water molecules, building a microscopic cage that denies microbes the moisture needed to survive. There is exactly one flaw in this desert strategy. If a container's seal breaks and external humidity seeps in, the moisture barrier is compromised and the defense collapses. But as long as they stay sealed in glass jars or vacuum bags, powders like cornstarch, fine baking soda, and instant bouillon will sit safely on your shelf, effectively outliving the grocery stores you bought them from. By completely eliminating water, we force time to stand still. A scoop of coffee dehydrated a decade ago will hit your mug with the exact profile, securing your morning routine no matter what is happening outside. We move up the spectrum from delicate powders to the second tier of defense, physical fortresses. Here, the preservation strategy relies on heavily armored organics. Look at this cross-section of a popcorn kernel. Items like whole peppercorns and unpopped corn survive because nature engineered them as microscopic vaults. The dense exterior shell provides a rigorous mechanical defense. This hard casing performs a specialized dual function. It permanently seals the volatile flavor oils and exactly the right amount of trace internal moisture inside, while projecting an impenetrable wall against external oxygen and fluctuating humidity. This organic armor acts as natural packaging that vastly outperforms modern plastic wraps and cardboard. It allows intense, morale-boosting spices and expandable calories to lie completely dormant, maintaining full potency until the exact moment they are ground or heated. Passive hiding and thick armor work well for dry goods, but the upper tiers of preservation require a shift. To protect liquids over long periods, the chemistry must become actively destructive. This pH scale shows how active hostility operates. By pushing liquids into hostile, highly acidic environments, like the extreme low pH of distilled white vinegar or raw apple cider vinegar, we create an area where harmful biology cannot function. When you combine this fierce acidity with a high sodium content and deep fermentation, you get a compound like dark soy sauce. The liquid itself forms a hostile perimeter, dissolving mold and bacteria before they ever have a chance to establish a foothold in the bottle. At the absolute peak of the defense spectrum is total chemical sterilization. This is achieved through liquids heavily saturated with high-proof alcohol, specifically pure vanilla extract and hard liquors. Once the alcohol content in a liquid crosses the 40% threshold, mathematical certainty takes over. The liquid becomes a permanent bodyguard, creating an environment so radically lethal to microbes that biological decay is physically impossible. Because this hostile environment is completely sterile, the ingredients within are shielded from rot. Over the course of decades, a bottle of real vanilla extract won't expire. Its complex flavor profile will actively mature, deepening and rounding out as it ages safely inside its alcoholic vault. Stockpiling deep vinegars and high-proof alcohols means securing a collection of indestructible chemical tools. These liquids are highly aggressive sentinels that permanently lock in the high-end flavors of your kitchen. The dark glass of vanilla or the sealed jar of instant espresso in your pantry are engineered fortresses. These are chemical assets waiting for deployment when the grid fails. Standard produce and fresh meats operate on a strict, rapidly ticking biological clock. But these specific items, the powders, the hardened seeds, the deep acids, and the heavy alcohols, completely ignore the passage of time. When standard systems fail, the stakes shift. The sudden warmth of a seasoned broth, the sharp hit of morning caffeine, or the bite of real vanilla in a baked good determines the gap between merely existing through a crisis and actually living through one. True preparedness relies on a strict set of rules. It demands mastering the ruthless alchemy of absolute dryness, organic armor, acidic hostility, and alcoholic sterilization. Time and humidity will eventually rot away standard survival rations, but a psychological arsenal built upon the unbreakable laws of chemistry will outlast the emergency itself.